Hi everyone, and welcome to Dezan Shira Associates' new podcast series, Asiapedia, Discover Asia's Business Environment. Dezan Shira Associates provides professional advisory service for investors looking to enter Asia. Now, within the series, we're going to bring you a variety of podcasts, from those like today, covering recent articles that have been written by our editors, to hosting industry experts from our company to share their insights and knowledge, and much more. And just as the title says, all of our episodes in this series will be focused on covering Asia's constantly evolving business environment. I'm Lauren, and to kick off our very first podcast for our new series, we have one of our editors, Dorcas, here from our website, China Briefing.
Hi Lauren, thanks for having me on the show. So in today's podcast, we will be covering China's city clusters, the plan to transform the country into 19 super regions.
So the scale of China's urbanization over the past 4 decades is really a staggering feat in human history. When China started its policy of reform and opening up in 1978, its urban population was just over 171 million, accounting for just 17.9% of its population. In 2016, that number was nearly 783 million, making it a staggering 56.8% of the total population.
Yes, it's really been quite amazing, and yet it seems that history is still in the making. China's urban population is on course to hit 1 billion by 2030. As the country's urban population continues to grow, the government is taking a leading role in building up its cities. And one way the Chinese government is achieving this is through developing city cluster plans.
Can you explain a little bit more about what these city cluster plans are?
Sure. So in the 13th five-year plan, the central government proposed creating a total of 19 city clusters to drive a more sustainable economic growth across the country. China has completed the strategy and investment plans for 11 of the city clusters, while the remaining 8 will be finished by 2019. The clusters are divided into 3 categories. Firstly, there are 8 small-sized clusters, which account for just under 2% of the national GDP and focus on driving provincial development. Next, there are 8 medium-sized clusters, which account for about 3 to 9% of the national GDP. These clusters focus on driving regional economic development. And now the last 3 clusters are often referred to as superclusters and are prioritized by the central government to become world-class by 2020. What does this mean? It means that they will be the most innovative, most internationally competitive, and will be the biggest drivers of China's national economic development.
So in this podcast, we're going to focus on China's 3 superclusters: the Pearl River Delta in southeast China, the Yangtze River Delta located on China's east coast, and the Beijing-Tianjin-Hebei cluster in China's northeast. So let's start with the first of these 3 clusters. The Pearl River Delta, or the PRD, is one of China's most open and dynamic regions. Located in the southeast, this region consists of a dense network of cities that covers 9 prefectures of the province Guangdong, as well as the cities Hong Kong and Macau.
This region is a powerhouse. In 2016, the region's combined GDP was $1.38 trillion and accounted for 12% of China's economy, even though it only comprised of 5% of the country's population. If we were to look at PRD as a separate country, it would be the 5th largest economy in Asia.
And it's really just the beginning for this cluster. In July of last year, the National Development and Reform Commission and the governments of Guangdong, Hong Kong, and Macau signed an ambitious new initiative to transform the PRD into the Guangdong, Hong Kong, Macau Greater Bay Area, or GBA. If the initiative develops according to plan, the region will be transformed into a dynamic hub of innovation and services with a GDP of $4.62 trillion by 2030. That means the PRD will overtake rival Bay areas in Tokyo, New York, and San Francisco to become the biggest in the world in terms of GDP.
That's right, and it seems that this initiative will also have impact beyond the Greater Bay Area, due partly to its strategic location on the maritime section of China's ambitious Belt and Road Initiative. For some added insight, Valeria Manunza, Assistant Manager at Dezan Shira Associates International Business Advisory Department, recently commented that, as one of the most international regions in China, businesses located in the Greater Bay Area should look to opportunities that will expand its range and use the region as a springboard to shift towards a more international perspective.
All right, let's move on to our second supercluster, the Yangtze River Delta region. It's one of the first regions in China to develop and open up, and one of the major engines of China's economy.
It is located on China's east coast. This region is made up of China's municipality, Jiangsu, Zhejiang, and Anhui provinces, covering an area twice the size of South Korea. Currently, the Yangtze River Delta is China's richest region per capita, and in 2016 generated a GDP of $2.76 trillion US dollars, accounting for about 20% of national GDP. It is responsible for 1/3 of China's imports and exports.
What do you think the future challenges are for this region?
So I think there's a few. Firstly, the Yangtze River Economic Belt includes 3 city clusters, 2 municipalities, and 9 provinces, but unfortunately it currently lacks developed and interconnected infrastructure. Well, for this Yangtze River Delta project to be successful, provinces and cities in this region will need to cooperate with each other and focus on their comparative advantages so that duplication is avoided, areas complement each other, and synergies are maximized. By itself, the Yangtze River Delta Cluster is an ambitious project. However, the Chinese government plans to extend these ambitions by exploiting the full length of Yangtze River.
So the last city cluster we're going to cover today is the Beijing-Tianjin-Hebei cluster. Being the capital city of China, Beijing is widely known. However, less is known about the Tianjin and Hebei province, which makes up the region surrounding Beijing in China's northeast. This is set to change, however, with the inclusion of the 2 provinces in the Beijing-Tianjin-Hebei integration plan.
So this cluster is also known as Jingzhenji and currently has a combined GDP of approximately 10% of China's total GDP. Areas within this region already have their own strengths in specific areas. Beijing is known as a political, educational, cultural, and R&D center. Tianjin, with one of the busiest ports in the world, is known as the northern China's logistics center. And finally, Hebei province is known for its heavy industries, including steel production.
Now, what are some of the challenges for this cluster?
So there are some concerns that this region lacks the integration needed to be successful. Generally, for clusters to be effective, they not only require a strong core city such as Beijing, but also require satellite cities to be economically strong and sufficiently integrated to support the whole cluster. This project will require resources within the region to be rebalanced more optimally, and areas will need to be more dynamic by building upon and adapting their current strengths.
I see. Well, unfortunately, our time is up for today, but before we leave, Dorcas, what do you think these clusters mean in terms of doing business in China?
So I think that while China's city clusters are certainly quite ambitious, and some might even say they're a bit unrealistic, so far they've proven to be quite promising and have already delivered a productivity boost in some regions. Foreign investors looking to enter the Chinese market should approach clusters with caution and diligence, recognizing that they have lots of potential opportunities for businesses.
All right, thank you so much for being with us today, Dorcas, and thank you all for listening. Now, if you're interested in learning more about these city clusters or just about China's business environment in general, you can always visit our website, China Briefing, for some up-to-date articles on the country's ever-changing business landscape. Plus, you'll be able to find Dorcas's articles there. You can also visit Dezan Shira Associates' Asiapedia page for more resources on doing business in Asia. We hope you enjoyed today's podcast and hope you tune in again for our next episode here on Asiapedia, Discover Asia's Business Environment.